Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Inside Tennessee. I'm your moderator, John North. John Becker is away. I don't know about you, but I love to go to the airport. I'll bet chances are a lot of you have, and you've used our Knoxville airport. We're going to talk all about that, and we're also going to talk about how significant the progress is down there. There is a lot going on, and the man who is our guest this morning, Patrick Wilson, is an expert at that because he's the president and CEO of the Metro Knoxville Airport Authority. Welcome, Mr. Wilson.
John, thank you very much.
We appreciate you having you. It's great to have you. Got a lot to talk about. Before we do that, let me introduce our two regular panelists, or semi-regular panelists. Don Bosch, an attorney and Democrat. Welcome.
Good morning, John. Good to see you.
Good to be seen. Eddie Smith, former lawmaker, Republican, and now with Child Help. Eddie, how's it going?
It's going well this morning. Joking and said, told Todd we need some different weather. We've had all 4 seasons in the last 3 weeks, but it's good to be here this morning.
Fortunately, it is sunny this morning, and I'll take that any day. A couple weeks ago when we were taping you all, we actually had concerns about tornado warnings, so we're beyond that, we think, and we're grateful for that.
Give it a week.
Yeah, well, that's right. March is soon to come. All right, I'm going to avoid the puns, but the airport truly is going places. And Patrick Wilson, there's a lot we wanted to talk about. I'll sort of kick it off, and then our gentleman here will carry on. And I want to talk to you about sort of the great things that are happening there, because it is historic in terms of the life of this airport and this region for all of the things that are going on. But I want to ask you this as we get further into those sort of specifics, passenger traffic and growth and what have you. What's your vision for what this airport is going to be?
It is an exciting time at the airport, and the way the airport serves the community, whether it's passengers, cargo, general aviation, corporate aviation, our military presence there, all those are just really moving in a very positive direction. So we look at the airport in a master plan concept that looks at 5, 10, 20 years and even post 20-year period. And our focus right now is to increase capacity, particularly passenger capacity, how people get to the airport on the roads, how they park, how they come into the building, how they'll transition through security, through the ticketing lobby, and then ultimately we need more gates because our airlines are doing so well. They're loving the Knoxville market, and they want to put more flights in here. So our vision, our focus is on expanding our capacity.
You mentioned passenger traffic. We saw in 2024 significant growth there, and we've been on a steady incline. Talk a little about that.
Yeah, if you look back to even 2016, and then you take out the 2 COVID years, 20 and 21, with those 2 years cut out of the picture, we've had 7 consecutive years of record growth. So really says a lot about the region. Our success really reflects the region's success. Mm-hmm. Our economic activity, the tourism part of our market is growing, the governmental side of our market is growing. Great things are happening in Oak Ridge with TVA, with University of Tennessee. Corporate traffic is growing as we have more corporations in our area, and then we've just seen an in-migration of residents as well. So all of those pieces of the market really make Knoxville a great story, and we can take that to the airlines, and they're seeing that as well. And the airlines say they do not create economic activity, they follow it. And so they are following what they see in the region.
Well, on that, when you talked about roadways, everything else, so let's look. Alcoa Highway undergoing a $400+ million expansion all the way up to the airport. Then as we were talking off air, the Hilton out there has undergone some renovations and some expansion. And now we see that what used to be surface parking lots is now a big dirt hole. What's going on right there around the airport in that big hole?
So in November, we had an event, had a lot of regional leaders out, and we introduced the region to our flight plan development program. It is a 10-year development program for the airport. Now, I'd like to point to the reality that the airport, McGhee Tyson Airport, was opened at this location in 1937, and I would say that there was never a day where there's not been something in reconstruction, rebuild, expansion, and so
the traffic cone is your mascot. Yes.
Flight plan is the latest 10-year period on that. And the things that the public doesn't see as much is on the terminal ramp, we're expanding the ramp to give the airlines more room to park. We are changing some of our systems inside the terminal, the flight information display system, arrival departure monitors, all new system. We're converting how the airlines use our existing 12 gates. We're putting common use equipment that would allow any airline to come into any gate and really maximize the current capacity of the building. And then as we move out to the land side, the front of the building, we're expanding the terminal road system. We'll be making part of that two-way around the road instead of one way it is now. And then our current biggest pressure is on parking. And we are building a 6-story equivalent to 3,500 space parking garage. It's dollar-wise, it's going to be the largest project that we've ever encountered at the airport, ever undertaken, and it's about a 2.5 years of construction. So what used to be surface is now a construction site. That puts even more pressure on our parking as we've had to build some temporary parking behind the Hilton and in that direction. And we really look forward to having a new parking garage that's much more modern and than even our existing garage.
I will confess to you that when word first came out about the new parking garage, which is great, we were joking about the current garage, which is sort of an 80s model. I thought the decimal point maybe had been moved over in the wrong place. I thought it was $18.5 million, but it's actually $185 million. It ain't cheap to build a parking garage.
It is not, and we've launched out to where, the time where the whole world's seeing prices increase, and those numbers get really big when you try to apply that to a garage. But we also know that the demand's there. We have put a lot of work into making sure the garage is something the region can be proud of. We did not want to build a big stack of concrete pancakes, and so a lot of effort went into a visioning process, a lot of input from the stakeholders from the region, and so we think the structure is going to complement the wonderful area we live in.
We're talking with Patrick Wilson with the Airport Authority. We're going to take a break right now, but we'll be back with more conversation. You're watching Inside Tennessee. It's Inside Tennessee. You are looking at the future parking garage down at TYS, McGhee Tyson Airport. They're off Alcoa Highway. It's beautiful. It's distinctive. Well, I mean, as beautiful as a parking garage can be, I guess. Estimated construction cost of $185 million. We're talking with Patrick Wilson with the Airport Authority. Mr. Wilson, it is fair to note that there are some true pains and efforts to make it look distinctive architecturally, and that it has a sort of distinctive profile on the landscape, as in mountains, it looks like.
Absolutely. As visitors come into our airport, or as our local population returns home, the vision, the view of the mountains is a pretty significant part of what you see. So we wanted to make sure that we didn't put a big block structure that took away from that. We want people to know when they land, if they're new to our area, that yes, they are in East Tennessee. And so as we designed the garage, and it's going to be a very large structure compared to what is there now, we thought it was very important to continue to have something that blended with our natural environment to really be an appropriate front door. And that's pretty typical for airports to do more anymore than just build a structure that does nothing but look like a box and holds cars. And so a lot of input, a lot of visioning thoughts and looking at photos and various things. The architectural team came up with this design, and we're excited to have that there for the public.
Don's going to ask you a question, but real quick, the goal is to have it open and ready by when?
Spring of 27.
Okay, not too far away, actually.
Patrick, I'm very impressed with what's going on, and really this is a overarching project. This just isn't a parking garage, as you mentioned at the onset of the show. We're dealing with terminals, another wing, more space for airlines, and you pointed out that I think a lot of our viewers don't understand it. Most of us just go through and we're ordinary passengers and we're taking the commercial lines, but there's private, there's a significant military presence that uses that airport, and it harkens back to what tragically just happened in Washington, D.C. There's a lot of traffic coming through this airport. Are we doing anything with air traffic control and the tower, which to the ordinary eye looks a little antiquated? Is there any upgrade going on there, or anything that we're doing to increase security and increase traffic management management of airflow?
Number one, I'll really tip my hat to the air traffic control professionals we have with the FAA at McGhee Tyson and really around the country. They do an outstanding job of keeping air traffic at McGhee Tyson safe. They're very talented professionals, well trained, and we feel very comfortable with the level of safety we have, not only at McGhee Tyson, but really across the nation. Aviation safety is at a peak level of how safe it is. There is an occasional accident, but when you look back, it's been 16 years since there was a commercial passenger fatality. And so when you think of 2 billion passengers traveling every year domestically in the United States, 16 years of travel is really an amazing record.
Do you think we need any technological upgrades in our management system and in the tower?
I think we always need to be striving to improve the systems. Do I feel like we're safe today with the current air traffic systems and personnel? Absolutely I do. Do I think we should always be moving aviation safety ahead through technology, training? Absolutely I do. And that's what's really great about aviation. We have a great history of knowing exactly, not speculating, knowing exactly what happens in any accident, learning from that and applying it to the safety at the airport, to the safety with the aircraft, safety with the air traffic management system. So there is a real dedication, and there has been for decades within the U.S. aviation system and really across the world, of always moving forward to improve safety.
And again, we were talking off air. So, past the garage, past the ramps and everything that you're working on now, there's going to be, I think, 6 more gates eventually to the right, 6 more gates to the left as you go up. Security will be moving. So kind of talk about just over the next 10, 15 years what we can expect to see through McGhee Tyson with some of the changes. So
in 2021, we opened, cut the ribbon on a entirely new runway, and half of our airfield was reconstructed. So we call it, we're working from the runway out. And so the airfield is in great shape. We still have some renovation work and reconstruction on our other runway. So we're jumping to the land side. We're improving our circulation on the terminal roadway system, improving the parking experience, and then we'll come into the terminal building and start making some pretty significant expansion and improvements there. That will be, we're still looking at what's the best way to phase that. We hope to move into that construction sometime in 2027, maybe early 2028. A lot of investment there, so funding and how we put that together is a big piece of the puzzle we're trying to solve. But our goal will be before 2030 to have 6 additional gates. All of our airlines want more gate space in McGhee Tyson. They're really responding to the growth of our region. And so we want to have more gates for them over a number of phases. First phase hopefully is ready by 2023, and then somewhere between 2030, but between 2030 and let's say 2035, 2040, we'll add 6 more gates to the other side, and that will put us up somewhere around 24 total gates in the airport and take us quite a bit into the future.
We're talking about big changes at the Knoxville Airport there off Alcoa Highway, McGhee Tyson as it's called. More to come, but we'll take a break. We are back, last block, to talk with Patrick Wilson of the airport, our guest this morning. So what are you looking at? All right, so this is where the future gate expansion would go. If you remember, you cross the bridge by the fountain, you get through security, and if you hang a right now where American basically is, that's where we're talking. Patrick Wilson, when are we thinking that we would add gates down there, if you can give us an idea of the schedule?
So we spent the last year and a half doing the planning for that project, just kind of coming up with the concept, and now we are ready to move into the detailed design. So we think that will take us about a year and a half to get through the detailed design and also put the funding plan together for this as well. So we hope to be moving into construction 2027, maybe early 2028, and we would expect that that to be about a 2-year construction process. The challenge with that is keeping the airport running, keeping the current terminal building running, and keeping the airlines working as we do that construction. So there'll be a lot of pieces and phases to that, a little bit of a tricky construction process, but we're looking forward to having that somewhere in 2030 available to the public.
So Patrick, we'd probably be remiss if we didn't bring this up right now, but the last 4 weeks have been challenging for a lot of federal funded agencies like airports, like TSA, like FAA. We've seen a lot of arbitrary cuts. Are you concerned that with this significant of a project that somehow it's going to, one day you're going to wake up and you're going to read an X tweet or whatever it may be, that you've just lost a bunch of funding and maybe this project is not as economically viable as you hope?
We don't have any concern at this point. We're not seeing anything that would impact that. The funding would be a lot of debt issue that the airport authority would issue. We would build that into a number of sources. It's our rate base that we charge the airlines for renting space in the terminal, pays that back over long term. There's also a passenger facility charge that every time somebody flies out, they pay a $4.50 piece of their ticket that comes back to the airport, and we use that in this case to help us pay those bonds and financing. And then there will be some, hopefully some state and federal grants that kind of round out the funding on that. But the aviation funding system, airport funding, infrastructure funding has been there. It's really the keys that unlock development of airports and moving airports forward. So our nation needs to keep those airports moving in a positive direction, and there can be some ripples in that at times, but we're very confident.
We're wishing for no ripples for you. So.
Well, and you brought up the $4.50. Just doing the quick math is a little over $130 million a year just on that $4.50 fee that comes back. So that really is where you can start looking at some of those things. But one of the things that drives that is the new carriers. We've had Allegiant that has opened up some new lines to Phoenix and a few other places. Flew one of those over the last week and a half. Both flights out and in completely full. Looking into the future, obviously more carriers coming in, even the existing carriers kind of bringing some bigger planes in that's more passengers. That kind of goes into that formula as well, outside of the federal funds that Don was talking about.
It does, and that passenger facility charge only applies to departing passengers. So as we look at incoming passengers, that's not part of the math. But it generates about $6.5 million. That'll for a year for us.
That's a good days of operation for you. Yeah.
And so we feel confident that we will put a funding plan together. It may have to come in phases, but we'll be able to accomplish what we need to keep growing the airport.
I would be remiss on behalf of people who are watching at home and asking this question right now at the television if we didn't ask you about recruitment of new airlines. We've got, 6 carriers now, I think? Is that correct?
Yes.
There's one out there everybody always asks you about, but regardless of that one, what about recruiting new airlines? I imagine it's something you all work on pretty steadily.
We never stop recruiting airlines, either new airlines or recruiting more service, more destinations, larger aircraft from our existing airlines. We have very talented individual in our marketing and air service development, and so we are in constant conversations with airlines. And the more our market grows, the more attractive we are to attract more airlines. So again, it's the economic activity of the region that really gets the airlines' attention, and we've seen good results with that.
Patrick Wilson, we appreciate you being with us this morning. A lot going on. People are going to be seeing that for the next several years at a minimum, and I would argue it's something to look forward to. Thanks for being our guest.
Well, thanks for having me. Thank you.
We will be taking a break. When we come back, we'll talk just a little politics. I told you at the start I'm an airport nerd. It's the truth. I just think the airport is one of the coolest places you can hang out. A lot going on. I wasn't kidding, Don Bosch.
Yeah, I've been now in Knoxville for 45 years, and this is the largest airport construction renovation project at Tyson McGhee that I have ever seen, that I've seen, that I've lived through. I lived through this many years ago in my hometown where I grew up in St. Louis with Lambert Field with a major renovation. But we're going to see a very different airport over the next 10 to 15 years, and I'm excited about it. I think it's going to increase destinations, travel, ease of travel. I'll be interested to see whether the perception that Knoxville is one of the pricier places to fly into and out of, whether that changes or whether that can change with some additional services being offered.
Everybody watching us is having that same wish.
Mm-hmm. You know, and I think when you look at McGhee Tyson, we've seen a lot of corporate growth around the area, you know, and what we're going to have to watch is how does some of the things that are going on in D.C. around DOGE cuts, around some of the federal cuts that are happening, it's impacting right now ORNL, TVA may be impacted, obviously the University of Tennessee may be impacted. What does that do in slowing down some of that economic growth that we were seeing from some of the companies that were moving in around some of those supports? And it may not, but I think that's one of those things that's going to have to be looked at to see what that long-term impact may be.
Well, and let's shift to that because every day it seems like we're learning a little bit more about potential cuts that may affect us.
Yeah, the comment I'll piggyback on what Eddie said is I think we are going to see some things, but this is a 4-year administration, and unless another MAGA type with very similar views as Trump-Musk coalition have. This is a 15-year project. I think it will outlive the current politics and administration and will be okay. But that said, going to your topic, John, we are seeing these arbitrary random cuts. Eddie and I had a pretty passionate discussion off air about this. You know, I think everybody is for cutting waste. We get that.
Absolutely.
But this is arbitrary, sometimes capricious, and it's like if you have cancer, you go cut out the cancer. You just don't start whacking at the body hoping you hit something. And that's what's happening. These are incredibly arbitrary, or seemingly so, and I think they're rushed. Yes, sometimes there is value in speed, but this is, I think there's a bigger, broader, and more insidious agenda going on in these cuts, and I'm a little frightened to see maybe where this goes.
You know, and I'll push back on that as Don would expect me to, which is, you know, we don't see the whole picture. You know, there may be things that they are finding that are not necessarily that we can see why they're making the cuts. And when you look at the fact that so far $54 billion is what they've identified as savings, you know, we could argue, are there people with that are 130 years old on Social Security?
Well, we could first argue, is that a true figure?
Well, there's a lot of debate about what is a real number there.
Well, and again, I'm taking that number, you know, they're claiming that a whole lot more, but when I look at actually what's on the DOGE website that you can go to and actually start drilling into the PDFs, that's more of a number that I feel comfortable with over the, I've seen some numbers already of over 100 billion, 150 billion. I don't think those are real yet. I think those are projections of what they think they could be. But even Elon has said, you know, the goal of cutting $2 trillion probably isn't going to happen. Could they get to $1 trillion of cuts? I think that's probably more realistic. But again, where are they cutting and where does it end up hurting?
And they have a huge credibility problem. If they say it's daylight, go outside and look up at the sky right now, because everything they've said, nearly everything they said, has been debunked, has been an exaggeration, or just hasn't been true. And so we need some accuracy in the reporting. I'm all for finding waste, ferreting out waste, reducing deficits, reducing debt, but not the way they're going about this one. And they're hurting good people. I'm getting calls from people in this district in good government jobs, things that are necessary, and they're just randomly getting cut. And they're just not looking at who they're cutting. They say, let's just lop off 20%. Not which 20%. And some of these people are incredibly necessary, and that's what should frighten us right now.
It's an interesting discussion. It's something we'll be watching every day because every day it's changing. It's time to end this visit with you this morning. We appreciate you watching Inside Tennessee. We'll be back. Take care.